Hi, welcome to the first portion of the lecture for character design and anatomy for animation drawing and composition UJMN 1004. Okay, so you can see the PowerPoint slide that we have here today. We'll be going through character archetypes, the first topic, until line of action, which is the fourth topic in this lecture, in this first part. So I'm going to spend this first part of the lectures on these four topics, and the rest we will go through rather quickly because I think these things need you to actually practice. But I will still go through it because I feel that you need to know what are the key issues. These two topics are rather interesting. Then we have, oh, maybe the first part of this lecture I'll go up to forms and construction, so 5 instead of 4. Yeah, so character archetypes all the way to form and construction. Okay, so just to start off, what is an archetype? When we are talking about archetype, the word archetype, okay, etymology means where's the origin of the word coming from. It is actually Greek, and the original, what it means is the original template, the idea that all humans and characters can fall within a type, meaning that what they were trying to do, they were not people who were doing animation or anything. They were psychiatrists, psychologists, and what they were trying to do is study human behavior. Okay, they did not know that it will be used for films and animation later on. They were trying to categorize human behavior and characteristics into different categories. How it all began was actually goes much further, but the person that really developed a lot of this archetypes is Carl Gustav Jung. He's I think Swiss psychiatrist and psychotherapist. It's pronounced Jung, not Jung. Now, initially, there were only four main categories called the self, the anima, the animus, and the shadow. Now, I will not go through these with you because it's quite complex, but he developed a little bit boring, to be honest, because it's very scientific, it's very philosophical, and quite deep. But I think I will introduce the one that will be a lot easier for you guys to understand because it's more movie related. Okay, so I think you all have, if you have done the UJMN 1033 unit script writing and storyboarding with me, you will have been introduced Joseph Campbell, who came up with the idea of the monomyth. Yeah, and then Christopher Vogler in 2007 developed the monomyth even further and introduced character archetypes within the monomyths. So Christopher Vogler, he actually played a very important part in introducing character archetypes. That means he tried to actually pick out certain characters that always occur within these monomyths or these movies. Yeah. If you want to know what monomyths are, you can Google them. But monomyths usually are general storylines that follow the hero's journey path. Okay. Now, the Pearson-Marr archetype indicator is a very unique archetype indicator that has 12 character archetypes, and this is the 12 that you see here. If you Google them, you can find them in different designs, but basically these are the 12: the sage, hero, caregiver, the innocent, the jester, the ordinary guy or girl, the outlaw, the ruler, the lover, the magician, the explorer, the creator. They all have different characteristics. Now, when we are talking about heroes in a movie, and once again, I will remind you, when I use the word hero, it does not mean that he needs to be a guy and that he needs to be very strong, muscular, and heroic. It is basically, the hero means the main character. Now, the main character could take on any one of these 12 personalities. Sometimes a hero can be a mix, and more often than not, most people, they are a mix. There is no such person that could be just a pure hero. Usually the hero could be, for example, mixed with a creator. So the hero means someone who's brave, courageous, but at the same time he's inventive, which is a trait personality of a creator. Yeah. For example, if let's say we talk about the Hobbit, yeah, or rather we talk about the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, who is Frodo. Frodo, he's the main character in the Lord of the Rings. Now, he has a mixture of the hero, which is the main courageous character, which he becomes later on, but he starts off as the innocent, one who seeks purity, goodness, and kindness. Sometimes this innocent character is also called the child, meaning he's very naive. The hero can start off as a naive character. In love stories, the hero or the main character is oftentimes the lover mixed with someone else. For example, if he's a prince, he could be the lover and the ruler. Yeah. The outlaw is someone who's rebellious. For example, if you want to take Batman, he's a very famous character who is an outlaw and both the hero at the same time. He's also a creator because he's very inventive in creating all his gadgets, or rather someone invents it for him. So now you can see that there are a mix of different types of characters, and it is important when you are developing or designing a character that you know what archetype the character is, because archetypes are very closely related to how shapes can actually tell what archetype, or actually convey what kind of archetypes they are. Okay, so I think you've seen this before. Yeah. What this is actually the hero's journey. If you're doing the UJMN 1033 unit with me, script writing, storyboarding, you would know this is the 3X structure, and this is the one developed by Christopher Vogler. And there are characters in this story structure that have different personality traits of different archetypes. Okay. Now, I want to take some time here to talk a little bit about visual research. Now, what is the value of visual research? Okay, the more knowledge you know about what you need to design, the better your design is. All right, your design can become. It will have more meaning. Your audiences engage and can connect with your design more, because when you are designing something with visual research, you know what you are designing and you know what it looks like in real life, and people often identify with what is in real life. Okay, other reasons for research: to see what is already out there. That's very important, what is already out there. This is an example of when people probably didn't do enough thorough research and they develop an idea that seems too similar to something that already exists. To design something new from what is already out there. So so this is the case scenario. To make sure you don't seem like you're plagiarizing, and to also see how other people do it so that you can do it differently. Okay? Research that is closer to original source is better. What do I mean by original source? When doing visual research for an object, collect and archive photograph. Look at real pictures. Whenever possible, at least the most accurate. Alright? Why? Because there are details you cannot find if you are looking at someone else's artistic rendition. For example, if you go and Google an apple, say for example, if you have never seen an apple before, and this is the image you get, and you are referring to this image to draw your apple. Yeah? Can you imagine all the details that might be lost when you're looking at this instead of a photograph like this and this and this? You see, an apple is not completely red. There are small little dots that you might probably want to use in your design. Or sometimes it could be apple that is red and yellow color, like these two species of apples. So when doing research, it is important to look at photographic references also. In fact, it is more important to look at the photographic references first. Now, I'll show you an example. For example, some of you guys are doing the unit with me that requires you to design, for example, a llama. A llama is an animal I think is quite rare. Not many people have seen it. Now, when you Google llama and say all you see is this picture of a llama, let's just say a caricature of a llama like this one. No drama llama. So if I see a picture like this and thought that a llama basically looks like this, I would miss out on all the other great pictures of what a llama can look like. For example, this one with a funky hairdo. Yeah? Or maybe this one. Or maybe even this one. Or how a llama would look like with all the fur. So all of these details are lost. You will not be inspired if you did not look at real photographs. because llama comes in all different shapes, sizes, characteristics. They are quite a funny animal. So it's important for you guys to do actual research of actual photographs in order to know what they look like in real life. If you know and have watched how Pixar does their research, for Finding Nemo, they actually go and visit actual aquariums to look at how the fish look like, how they swim. They don't just imagine it off the top of your head or just remember it from memory. Okay, because oftentimes our memories might betray us how certain things look like. It's not accurate. We do not have photographic memory. Okay, so it is important whenever we are drawing to do drawing from photographs, especially for you guys who are just starting to learn how to draw or might not have drawn as much as many people have out there. For example, those people who have been in the industry, you need to look at photographs. All right. When doing visual research for styles, then you may consider collecting artworks of other artists. So when you're doing research, there are two types of research I want you to do when you're designing your character or your design and your background. You need to do photographic research, look for photograph sources, but also look at works of other artists, how they have done it, see how they develop their style to seek inspiration. So there are two different types of research for two very different reasons. Okay? Now, going on to the next one, character silhouette. Now, usually this is one way of starting off how to design a character. Okay, is to make sure that their silhouette reads very well. This has to do very much with the first class that I talked to you about. Remember the class where in the lecture slide in the first week where I showed you how certain characters look lighter, some characters look heavier. This can be done very much in the initial stage when you are just creating a silhouette. Now, what's a silhouette? It's imagining the character as a whole black form, meaning what you're doing is just creating the outline of the character, the form. Yeah, this basically this is important because this is where you actually set the archetype of the character, or actually set the tone of how the character will be in terms of which archetype it falls into. For example, this one you can see is a very big heavy guy. He's very muscular, broad shoulders, so obviously he's going for the archetype of the very heroic kind of character. But these little horns that stick up probably exposes him as one who is an outlaw, a rebel. Yeah, probably this one who is a little bit more slender with a cape and with all these curves, probably he's a little bit more magical. Yeah, so he could be a character that's a sage. So different characters or different shapes actually have different attachments to different archetypes. All right, you have just to emphasize how important silhouettes are when you're developing characters. Look at this. We all look at this silhouette and we know automatically what famous character is this, because it is so famous. And his shape and his design is so simple that everyone recognizes as Mickey Mouse. So when we look at it, we know automatically when we look at two globes on top of a head, it is Mickey Mouse with a little snout and big shoes. So silhouettes are so important for you to make sure that your characters are memorable. All right, and complicated silhouettes sometimes are not better. Sometimes less is more. Look at this. Look at Mickey Mouse. Look at Cinderella. They are a lot simpler. Goofy and Pluto, they are all very simple silhouettes, but you recognize them. You recognize this as Dumbo, right? So sometimes less is more. Yeah, so it is important to take note of probably how the silhouette of your character looks like. You do not want something too complicated that it looks like a mess of nothing. Okay, now this is what I meant by how artists or designers in movies have actually used the idea of shapes to conceal an archetype. This is one very famous example. This is the character Lotso from Toy Story 3. He is the main villain, but when you look at him, look at his shape. Look at the round face and the round ears and his round belly. And even his cane is a very simple wooden cane that looks like it's rounded and that poses no threat, right? So the designers were very clever in using this kind of shape to trick you into thinking that he's a different archetype, but in actual fact, he is the main villain. Same with this character here in Wreck-It Ralph. All right, he is a main villain, but look at his shape initially. Very round, very safe. Or usually circular shapes give an idea that the character is safe, because you know, round circular is a very happy shape, it's a very lively shape, as compared to sharp edges and thorns or triangles. Those give a different kind of feeling. Okay, so have a look at all these types of silhouettes of different characters, and you will understand why it's important to develop silhouettes first, because they are the starting point of how you develop a good character. And next time when you're designing characters for your assignment, for your assignment 2, I think is where you are designing characters. In fact, you design your character in class exercise 5. When I say I want different types of experimentation or different types of design, I don't necessarily mean that you need to design something that is so different from each other. Sometimes just adjusting the tweak, the length of the hand or the hunch of the back, the length of the leg, these variations itself give very different feeling. For example, look at this design here, right? This character here, number 2, as compared to, let's say, number 6. See, it gives very different feeling. If I want the character to be able to run fast, I'll definitely go for number 6 because he has longer legs and a higher hip bone, which means he's probably a little bit more agile. Compared to someone with a lower pelvic bone, he's probably a bit more stable, but at the same time denotes someone who's a little bit heavier. Yeah, so this would be more agile than this. But if I want someone who's able to fight with more brute force, I'd probably choose number 5 because he has broader shoulders, yeah, bigger arm. So you see, just slight differences in the silhouette can mean very different things, what you're looking for. Okay? Now, coming to this little thing called line of action. Now, remember in the first class, I introduced a type of line to you guys, and the line is called an implied line, meaning a kind of invisible line that goes through any object or any person. Now, in a character, that line is called line of action. It basically kind of suggests the character's movement, in which direction or his action. Okay, hence line of action. Gives the what is the function of line of action, or just in short LOA? It gives the character a sense of motion, gives this motion a flow and direction, usually runs through the spine and the longest, most outstretched limb. So this is the line of action for this character. You can see that this line is leaning towards the right hand side. So in the final character, you can really see that she is leaning towards that side. Look at this dancer, for instance. You can see the curve, yeah, very graceful curve, as opposed to if, let's say, he did not have this hand kind of coming over to this side and the spine was straight, you would not get such a nice graceful curve, which emphasizes the grace and the slenderness of the character. Okay, now these are other examples. If you go to Pinterest and you type line of action, you'll find a lot of these examples and how they use line of action to really emphasize the pose of a character, yeah, to really push it forward, okay, to make it more obvious. These are other examples as well. Now, this one is actually from the book Principles of Animation, or I think yeah, this principle. No, actually, sorry, it is from what you call the. I think it is by Richard Williams, the book, the Animation Bible, or I think it's the Animation Bible or Animation Workshop. Now, this is just an example of how a character does not have a clear line of action. This first one with the two cats punching each other, whereas this one has much clearer lines of action here, and you can see the action is unmistakable. You know that this cat is punching this cat because the line is thrusting towards this cat. Look at this one as opposed to this one. You know that this one definitely he's going to swing back and he's going to swing the club forward, right? This one as well. So all of these are very good examples of how you can make your line of action very clear. Okay? Yeah. This one as well, some examples from SpongeBob. Yeah. This is what not to do, and this is better. Yeah. We try to create a curve, especially when it's a character that is in movement. Very rarely do we want a character that's tall and stiff unless you want to absolutely create a sense of awe and rigidness about the character. For example, sometimes you see in Batman animated series, he's just this tall kind of a slender character that's very stiff and rigid. It's probably because you want to show, the animators wanted to show that he's this unmovable hero of the dark that, you know, cannot be wavered. So sometimes we do do things like that in order to convey that kind of information or that kind of feeling. Now, how do we actually use photographs to create these lines of action? I've got a sample here, and I'm just going to overlay it with a white layer and show you how to use photographs to really push it forward and how to find the line of action in a photograph or a character. For example, like this one, the line of action is, I'm going to use a blue color. So I usually would start off very simply by drawing the shape of the head here. Okay, yeah. And his spine would be where the line of action will be. Usually it runs through the spine. Okay, just one more time. And then it seems that the line of action will go down his leg here, right now. Okay, go down his leg here. And then there's another one here. And his hands are up. Okay, I would try and actually take this pose further. Yeah, and probably what I'd like to do is push it even more in terms of an animation. Yeah, I really want to crouch his what you call his back more, probably even push his leg up more, forward even more, and push this leg back more. So you can see I've exaggerated the line of action to really make his pose even more clear. It is not that this photograph is not good, but there's only a certain capability of our human body, and when you're doing animated characters, you really want to push the poses. You want to make it as clear as possible. That's what animation is about, right? To really make the impossible. Okay, so I usually like to push poses like this. So when I'm drawing a character, for example in an action sequence, I would try and look for a photographic reference of the pose I want and try and push it even further and then draw the character over it. Okay, that's a way to learn. I always learn through photographs. Alright, so if I choose a few more examples of how lines of actions are detected throughout this character, for example like this, you can see the curve of the spine. There is a sense of motion there. Even with this, very simple, I think you can see it already in the curve of the spine like that. This one with the curve, I think it's more like this. Yeah. So there is always a curve. The curve is usually either a C or more of an S. Alright, C or an S. Yeah. So the Batman pose is obviously what I just told you just now. It looks something like this lah. So sometimes you got, for example, the Batman character, right? So he's standing straight with his cape. So it's very straight. Yeah, it's straight down, and he's very sturdy. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about if you want that kind of feeling. Okay, but oftentimes our character are always moving. You want to push their poses a bit more. Okay, so that's line of action. Yeah, let's get back to our slides. Swap. Sorry. So yeah, every character should have a line of action that is very, very clear. Yeah. For example, if he's evading something, make sure that the body leans backwards to the C. Yeah, do not just make him stand still and then just have his arms up. It doesn't read very clearly. Lean him a little bit back so that you get this curve. Okay, let's go and look at, if you want some more examples, there are plenty online. If you go to Pinterest, let's try and look at Pinterest for a bit. And like I said, please, everyone who is in my class, you need to download Pinterest. It is important that you have Pinterest in your phone so that you can do research at any point of time. Okay, I'm gonna just type line of action. Okay. And there are lots of other examples. You can see some of the ones I've chosen, and then you can see there's some anime one. This is a very good one. You see, instead of straight, have her bend. So it's a lot more obvious that she's bored, right? So yeah, it's a sense of exaggeration that you need to push. And those of you who have done principles of animation with me, you know that exaggeration is part of the principles of animation. So you need to apply it. And like this one, line of action for when she's punching. See, this is very stiff, very rigid. Bend her forward, create that C curve so that it's more clear. Yeah? Okay? Sometimes you might ask your friend to pose in a punch because you want to use her as a photographic reference. But if she's not giving you very much of a good pose, then you can just use the photograph and just add that C curve in, and then you've got your reference. Okay? So please install Pinterest if you're in my class. At any point of time, I'll probably ask you to whip it out and we'll do research together. Okay? Let's get back to the slides. Swap this. And next, I think this is the final portion of this part one of the lecture, is do create or construct your character in a three-dimensional form is what we prefer. I think 2D, if you're looking at 2D, designing things like South Park is pretty easy. That's not what we're going to go after. What I'd like to do is teach you guys how to design in 3D, so that if you want to revert back to 2D, it's also very easy, because it's harder to design things in 3 dimension than in 2 dimension. Okay, so please use spheres and ovals and not circles. There's a difference. Spheres and ovals are 3-dimensional. This is a sphere. You can see it's 3-dimensional, right? Circles are just flat. You cannot see dimension. Cubes and not squares. Cones and pyramids, okay? So use 3-dimensional shapes in order to create your character. Give them a sense of depth. Yeah, one leg in front of the other, one hand in front of the other. It should not be flat. Okay. So yeah, I think this basically concludes the first part of our lecture. I would like to continue the next part, but the next part would be more requiring more of your own practice. And also a lot more of your own research. Okay, but basically I've covered what I need to in this first part of the lecture. So just remember, let me bring up the slide content again here. So we have covered character archetypes. Yeah, you need to know what kind of character you are doing. Is it a heroic character, a shy character, an evil character? So by knowing what kind of archetype they belong to, you can use the Pearson-Ma one I showed you and think about what kind of shape best describes a character. If it's an innocent character, would you use a lot of sharp shapes? Probably you might want to use more circles instead. And even the placement of the pelvic bone, which is the core of the character, is different from different characters. If you want a character who is probably like an explorer type of character or archetype, because he's always on the go, you might want his pelvic bone probably a little higher than lower. Yeah. And because he's moving all the time, an explorer character, he might be more thin. So you see how archetypes determine the shape of your character. And when you are good enough in terms of designing characters, then you know how to break the rules, like what they did in Toy Story 3 and Wreck-It Ralph with the two bad guys, right? To deceive people into thinking they are a different archetype. Yeah. Sometimes you can design a character that is so nasty looking, but at the end of the day, you might find that, oh, he's a good guy, right? So there are ways to break rules, but I think you need to probably master trying to develop a character that probably conforms to the rules first. That is easier to identify what kind of archetype they are. Okay, then we talked about visual research. I highly recommend that anytime you come and see me, if you want to design, for example, a samurai character, please bring photographs of samurais, be it samurai costumes from a museum, photographic, historical photographs of samurais, what you call actors in samurai costumes. So, photographic references. Then we talked about silhouettes, how silhouettes are closely tied with character archetypes, and also line of action to really push and exaggerate the motion of your character. Okay, so these are the four main things that I've covered in this first part of the lecture. Do watch the next video, which covers a little bit more about how to draw, what are the main key issues that I usually find students having a problem with. Okay, thank you very much.